Welcome to Shattered Reality with your hosts Kate Valentine and Fahrusha. Prepare to have your paradigms shifted and your truths questioned. And now, Shattered Reality.
Hey there, Kate. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. I'm very good, actually, Fahrusha. And I know for our listeners, they just should know it's been a really sort of an unusual weather afternoon.
Oh, yes, here in the New York, New Jersey area, we are having a lot of rain intermittently, winds. It's really kind of screwing up traffic, which affects all of us coming here to do Shattered Reality.
Yeah. How is the weather by you, Alex?
You know, I don't want to brag, but we're in San Diego. It's always beautiful, and it's beautiful today. It's especially beautiful today. But I grew up in Chicago, so I went through my share of bad weather, so I deserve this.
Well, this is our podcast number 14. We started out in November of 2014, and now this is the 14th show that we've done. And we are really, really, really pleased to welcome a veteran of podcasting, Mr. Alex Tsakiris, and his wonderful podcast is Skeptiko. And I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. He has done 279 podcasts since 2007. And I have to tell him he has done a lot of heavy lifting for us. Yes, indeed. Because he has done something that I don't think that I can do myself. Maybe I'd surprise myself one day. But fighting the debunkers. Fighting the debunkers on a number of areas. He has really come to the aid of many people in consciousness research specifically, but beyond that, he has defended a lot of people, even against the being blackballed by the TED Talks. And I want to mention here, Alex, I should let you get a word in edgewise, but just in regards to that, please include Russell Targ, my dear friend Russell Targ, one of the founders of remote viewing, who has also been blackballed by TED Talks.
I've just made a little note to do that, Fahrusha. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. And we should be clear, I'm not defending anyone, or I'm just following my nose and doing what's obvious. And I think what you're alluding to is quite true. If someone's just fair-minded and looks at these cases that we're bringing to light, it's not a matter of taking one side or another. It's just taking the side of honesty and truth. So Russell Targ is a fabulous researcher, brilliant mind. I've interviewed him a long time ago on Skeptiko, and his words have stuck with me for a long time. He's written some excellent books and has been way out ahead of the curve a lot of times on a lot of these issues. So thanks for bringing that up, and yet another black mark against our friends at TED and their ideas worth sharing and protecting and censoring.
Yeah, the censoring is a little bit much. If you can't show any edge science, what's the point of repeating the same old stuff? And speaking of Russell, I am going to be seeing him this weekend in New Orleans, I hope, when I am at the International Remote Viewers Association convention, symposium, whatever, and he is there going to be presenting his movie, which the title of which remains unknown to me presently, but he's presenting the movie, which is his rebuttal to the TED Talks debacle.
Great. Well, thanks for bringing that to my attention. I just made another note. I'm going to check that out. Maybe it'd be a good time for me to follow up with Dr. Targ and get him on Skeptiko.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Now that I mention it, I have not had him on Skeptiko, so I have to double check myself. I was thinking of Charles Tart.
Charles Tart is a wonderful fellow too.
Wonderful guy too, but I just got the two confused in my mind. But of course, Russell Targ from Stanford Research Institute, who has just did amazing work with the Stargate project, And, their history is really interesting, right? I don't know if you've covered it on the show, but there were a couple of guys who were just, Targ has this amazing scientific background before he ever gets involved in this crazy remote viewing stuff. I mean,
Absolutely.
he's like world renowned in his field. I forget what his field. Do you remember what his field
Yes,
is?
I know all about his background. He comes from the same area of the village where I have lived for a number of years in the east, sort of central East Village. And his background, one of the things that he did before he got involved with remote viewing is he got involved with airplanes, and he had a way to improve the sensing systems on the airplanes that would have prevented many crashes from happening. But the airlines don't want to spend the money on instituting his very reasonable system of preventing certain crashes, and that's something to look up. And he really needs to be lauded in his efforts.
Absolutely, yeah, great guy. That research was amazing, wasn't it? I mean, I did do a couple of shows about that Stanford Research Institute that they did back in the 60s. Remember, with Uri Geller, and then they also did with Joe McMoneagle.
Joe McMoneagle is also a kind of a friend of mine. He's with the Monroe Institute, where I'm a member of the professional division, and we've had a lot of interesting conversations, Joe McMoneagle and I, and his wife Scooter, who is a wonderful astrologer, as well as the director of the Monroe Institute. And you've had Joe on, which kudos to you for that.
Well, you know what I thought was just amazing about Joe's story, just to recap for anyone who hasn't heard it. So Joe McMoneagle, psychic spy #1, and his I don't know, you probably know this from talking to him, but he actually got into this by having a near-death experience.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was a spy, if I can retell the story without messing it up off of memory. He's working on the East Germany, West Germany border, and he's a spy, a real spy like you see in the movies. And he's at this restaurant, and all of a sudden, right on the border, and all of a sudden he starts choking really bad. He doesn't know what's going on. He stumbles to his feet, stumbles outside the door, and dies.
Yes.
And they pick him up, they call military security, they get him there, they're racing him to a hospital. And meanwhile, he's having a full-blown near-death experience. He's outside of his body. He's looking down at the ambulance. Classic near-death experience. They're resuscitating him and all this. So as an aside, one thing he later finds out, or at least strongly suspects, is that he was poisoned by the East Germans. This was an attempt to kill him. I mean, so it's really this intriguing story. But he goes through and he has this amazing near-death experience. He recovers and is immediately surrounded by military intelligence officers who want to debrief him. And he says, hey, man, I was outside of my body. What's going on? Da, da, da. So they interrogate him like endlessly. They don't know what's going on, but, they have an interest now. They don't know what's going on. This is all, it becomes an intelligence matter. But what I found fascinating, Fahrusha, and this is the part of the story when later in his career, much later in his career, he shows up in front of Russell Targ at Stanford Research Institute, and they're going to do this remote viewing spying program. And he's been selected to do it. And his file is sealed with this like red top secret tape. And when Targ cracks it open, inside is a copy of Raymond Moody's famous book on near-death experience. So it goes to show you two things. One is that this extended consciousness, both near-death experience and remote viewing, is connected. And number two, the government has known it all along. They've understood the connection. They've seen it. And it really makes you wonder, circling back to your original point, how much they are really trying to rig the game and influence things when you see this, public science position statement that's being taken. Oh, that's ridiculous. That can't ever happen. Baloney. They know it. They've always known about it. They've known about it for a lot longer than these so-called cutting-edge consciousness researchers have. They're on top of it, and it's happening.
Yes. Well, I have a couple of things to say to that. I 95% agree with you. What I would say to that is, number one, yes, many of those people know about it. And my first remote viewing teacher, Mr. David Morehouse, I haven't seen him in a long time, but he was the first person I studied remote viewing with. He was also a sort of battle casualty in the Near East where he had, an injury. He had some kind of a blast, and also my memory has to serve me correctly, some sort of a blast during maneuvers in the Arabian Peninsula somewhere. And he saw, these beings, or this particular being, which was like Marduk or something of that nature. I'm giving it the name. He didn't. And he also became a member later in the game than Joe McMoneagle, who was 001 in the remote viewers pile there. And they were recruiting guys, Skip Atwater and the other recruiters. They were recruiting people from having had these instances and sending them off to be trained in remote viewing. That being said, so we had a wonderful guest our last time, which was
that young woman,
which is Dr. John B. Alexander, former colonel. Mm-hmm. And he makes this point, which everybody has to keep in mind, and we all slip on this point. The government is not a monolithic society. You've got people in different departments, different agencies. They believe all sorts of different things. But John Alexander studied what he thought. He had what was the name of his, Kate?
I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Okay.
Really
Colonel Alexander?
Yes, yes. He had a group called the Applied Theoretical Physics.
Theoretical Physics, ATP.
In order to keep it under the radar, and they studied UFOs and what the government knows about UFOs. Yeah. But that was just UFOs as one part of the picture, one thread.
But it was a prime example of how government can be manipulated.
Right. And if you read the beginning of his book, it's kind of like the beginning of his book tells us that, and I believe him on this point, certainly, that, the government is not a monolithic thing. And some people in the government know some stuff. Other people believe the exact opposite. All government employees, some of them very high up. You know what I mean, Alex?
Yeah, but oh boy, don't get me started on Colonel Alexander, who seems like a very nice guy and a smart guy. I don't want to put him down in any way.
Very smart.
It seems like his logic is completely backwards. The net of what I hear him saying is that, okay, it's not a monolith. Different people know different things. But since I don't know any of this stuff, then it couldn't have happened because it would have crossed my desk. That's total bullshit.
Yes.
So many things that he claims didn't happen. We have so many contradictory eyewitnesses for that it's really kind of ridiculous. And the other thing, his whole compartmentalization thing, which has been well established in the military intelligence field, really works against him. No, Colonel Alexander, you wouldn't know if they didn't want you to know. And the fact that, again, that is to say that different people know different things, well, that suggests some kind of hierarchy, that there is an order to that hierarchy, and up above that hierarchy, there's some people that know, I don't want to say everything, but maybe almost everything.
That would be interesting to talk to those folks.
I don't think they would talk to us.
No,
they wouldn't talk. They wouldn't.
I think
only.
They're a little bit above doing something like that.
And worse yet, it's
you will
not
never
only
know who they is.
Well, it's not only that they wouldn't talk to us,
they don't
but
have
they
to.
would talk to us, and they would deliberately misinform us.
Disinformation.
Deliberately disinformation, obfuscation. This is the history. Anyone who doesn't believe in conspiracy theories, I've gone over this so many times. It's like I always tell my own just personal life story of, when I first took a job out of college, I worked for a really well-respected accounting firm. And I was just a little minion. I was down at the bottom doing information systems consulting. I was a computer programmer type. But there were no conspiracies. I was told to go to Ralston Purina and to be a part of this information systems audit. I was told to go to Anheuser-Busch, and life was very simple. It seemed very simple to me. As I advanced in my career, And then as I had my own company, and as I was in the process of putting together larger deals or selling my company to a publicly traded company, my God, everything was a conspiracy, right? Everything was, don't let that guy know in this information, get together with our lawyers, what are their, everything is a conspiracy at that level. So it's just people who deny conspiracy theories are just naive about how the world works.
Yes.
If you work pulling milkshakes at McDonald's, no, there aren't a lot of conspiracies. But when you get a lot of money and power involved, everything is a conspiracy.
I mean, even now they're conspiring to get $15 an hour. That's a total conspiracy. It's I mean, you can go from the Latin conspiro, with hope. I mean, people with wealth and power get together to keep wealth and power. What's the big deal? But the thing is, though, what stops them is something like yourself. Certainly, skeptics have a long history in human history. And how did you come from accounting to become a Skeptiko?
Well, I wasn't really an accountant. I was an information systems guy.
Okay.
And then I was fortunate enough, I started my own company, and through extreme luck and grace, I was able to sell that company and then have some time to pursue the things that I really wanted to pursue. And for me, it was always, again, it just seemed obvious to me that the big picture questions were what I should focus on. Who are we? Why are we here? Who's telling the truth? So that was just my approach. I didn't have any fixed agenda in terms of what the answer was. I was just kind of frustrated that everyone seemed to be kind of not very concerned with the questions I thought were the most central, important questions. And I realized that religion had really failed in terms of answering those questions. So I was looking to science, but then I was immediately drawn to people in the scientific community who were kind of outsiders who were saying, well, science really isn't telling the truth either. They're kind of doing this bait and switch thing with the truth as well. So that's what really sent me off on just trying to get these answers to these questions. And Skeptiko and the show was just my cover, or a way to ask the intelligent people that I really wanted to ask, these questions, because you can't just call them up out of the blue and say, hey, tell me the truth.
I was going to say that's sort of our reason for doing this.
Yes. Well, my reason for doing it is I'll go into in a minute, but I want to tack back a second to the John B. Alexander question. And what I found to be, there are a lot of people who don't believe everything he says. I don't believe everything anybody says, even my mom. But the point here is that after they got past those questions that you brought up, what's his name? The guy who had the
which one?
Oh boy, just my mind fails me.
It's not a Kodak moment.
No, it's not a Kodak.
Senior moment.
It's a senior moment. Rich Dolan, who wrote all those wonderful books about UFOs and the national security state, and a few other books. And he's a really good guy, and I want to say hi, Rich. But beyond that, Rich Dolan and Colonel John B. Alexander, Ph.D., had a debate, and our friend Chase Kletsky who was a MUFON executive at the time. She's since resigned, I believe. They had a debate, and Chase Kletsky was the moderator. Now, after they got over those few questions that you very rightly brought up, Alex, they agreed on almost everything, even though they were supposed to be at opposing ends of the scale. In other words, they both agreed on the reality of UFOs. They both agreed that they're out there now, that people see things, that some of them seem to be nuts and bolts and some of them seem to be not so much. And so the fact that he might not be telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth might have something to do with his government former position as well. And I don't even want to go there with him on that. But now, moving on along with you, and the reason for your doing Skeptiko, and bringing it up to the reason for us doing Shattered Reality, big part of my reason is because I think the media, the mainstream media, is deluding us, like pointing the finger at certain things going on, trying to pull our attention away from things that are really, really important. I'm not saying, if somebody passes away and somebody's shot it's not important to that person and that person's family, and on some level important to the United States and to the world. But when you're 24/7 on some situation out there in the media, and you ignore the fact that there isn't a volcano erupting in Southeast Asia, and people are jumping in the water off Australia and killing themselves, and on and on, they just obscure like really important news stories with this monofocus. And not only that, when you or I get interviewed by somebody on CNN or CBS or whatever, they put out a tape of what you've said, and then they cut it up, and they even change the question that was asked. And I've had this done to me. I've had my things that I said that were really not foolish at all. I've had them turned around by sort of creative splicing of my interview. So this gives me and Kate Valentine the opportunity to say things and talk about subjects that we find to be compelling. And I wonder if that's part of your reason, and I think you're saying it is.
Well, I'd jump off on that point on a couple of different directions. I mean, undoubtedly true, right? First, in terms of what you're saying, I don't know about you, but I think most people probably, I imagine, a lot of the people who are listening to this show and listen to my show are in the same situation. Is I can't even turn on CNN. I mean, I can flip through the station, but it's just like I just start laughing as soon as I see it. It's like, this is the shattered reality. This is like a joke. But the good news is, I think, just on a pure numbers basis, I think the influence of mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream media is more and more called into question by this alternative media. It just is. The numbers, the growth numbers are clearly on the side of the alternative media and clearly on the side of this kind of long tail broadcasting like we're doing. People are getting their information from a lot of different sources, and what could be better than that? But the other thing I'd say, and this is kind of more from a spiritual perspective, but I think it's definitely true for me, and I just think it's true in general, is that we pull the wool over our own eyes. We don't want to really deal with the full implications of what we find out here in terms of extended consciousness, in terms of you're not a biological robot, your brain isn't your body, there is something that persists after death. That's a lot to take in. That's a lot to really deal with what that means to be connected. That, Kate, you and I are connected. Fahrusha, you and I are really connected. I mean, we want to, I think, I want to escape sometimes back into the material world where I can fight with other people and win an argument and, all that. I want to escape back there, but I know that that's not the real world either. So I think we delude ourselves as well.
Well, you're really good, really, really good at the debate area, which is the point which, if you get to speak to some of these debunkers in the way that you do, and that you sort of stop them in their tracks, and I really do appreciate it. And if you go too far to one extreme, you've got the people there like evangelical types and fundamentalists who believe that you have to believe what they believe. And
yes, but they do believe in an afterlife.
Yes, they do.
So their afterlife is heaven. The Muslim afterlife is the
paradise.
Yes, with the virgins in the mansion. And I guess
well,
sort of
the
like
truth of the matter is,
dream come true, but I don't know.
We don't know what it is.
I know, but they are true believers.
They are true believers, but belief is not really the point here. The point here is experiential. Experientially finding out what's going on.
Are you supposed to experience until that moment comes?
Well, that's a good...
There's a question. What do you think about that, Alex? I mean, let's assume that there is life after death, and are we supposed to know about it now, or does that sort of skew the whole idea of living?
I don't think we know those answers. One of the things that I think Skeptiko has brought me to, it's funny, the name people... ask me sometimes, Skeptiko, what are you doing? You're digging into the skeptics, and it's like, I don't know. I really kind of, it's one of those things that I'm sure you all can relate, but weird synchronicities. But I'm looking for the name of this show, and I'm kind of thinking, the skeptic, reclaiming skepticism. And I'm on Wikipedia and wherever else. Talk about Wikipedia. Talk about TED, right? We should talk about Wikipedia.
Yes, indeed.
Really get our blood boiling here. But so, skeptic comes from this ancient Greek word of skeptikos. And it was this group of philosophers that were very keen on not coming to any conclusions, only asking questions. And they almost saw it as a religious journey to continue to ask. And I kind of disregarded that. I said, oh, that's cool. I have Greek heritage, and that's skeptikos, boom. And I just grabbed the name. And over 7 years, I've grown into that in terms of understanding it really is, at least for me, about continuing to ask questions, continuing not to be pinned down or fixed. So, Kate, that's what I think is that, the near-death experience science, let's say, because it is an important science, it brings us to the brink. It says there is more, there is vastly more. But it doesn't allow us to really come to any firm conclusions because these near-death experiencers, right? They have experiences all over the board, right? Some of them are seeing Jesus. Some are seeing nothing. Some of them are seeing just a white light. You can form whatever conclusion you want out of that. So I think it's important to stay open to the question.
Shall I give him my father's famous line?
I don't know what your father's famous.
Oh, it is. I was asking him this, and I think it was first year college. We went over all this, and I was saying, "Gee, I wonder what there is." And he goes, "Well, kid, I can tell you one thing: we're all dying to find out."
Well, yes, indeed, there's that.
Yes. I find his show really interesting. I'm glad you introduced me to this, Fahrusha. This is really cool. So you're on a search for truth.
Yes.
Good luck.
I like the way that you take on the proselytizing atheists, because I've come from a place where, generally speaking, in polite societies in New York City, you generally don't question people's religious beliefs. You just let that go. And people are in New York City that I always hung around with, they don't generally push something on you. Somebody's a Greek Orthodox, somebody's a Jew, somebody's a lapsed Lutheran like me, and you let it pass. But sometimes you meet these people who are virulent atheists. They're so strongly atheists that they cannot stand the fact that you are not an atheist, and they grill you, and they put you down, and they keep at you, almost more so than a proselytizing evangelical type person. And so I'm very happy to see you skewer some of those folks, though I must tell you, I felt a little sorry for John Loftus, simply because he seemed like, a nice sort of a guy that never really thought through his positions to the final outcome of what he was thinking, the denouement of what he was thinking, in other words. He didn't seem to get it. He seemed like he needed to believe something. Having been a very strong Catholic at one point in his life, he had to turn his back on that because he became disappointed in that, and he then took up atheism like a religion. And I think that his mental state he's a different person mentally than, say, you or I. He just needs a belief system. Do you know?
Yes, and I think we could say that about a lot of atheists. And it's that's going to sound harsh, or it's going to sound judgmental, but it's just like you're mentioning. Hey, listen to the show and go through the logic. But the whole logic of atheism is just kind of silly in one sense. It's because atheists are very committed to this idea that we are meaningless beings, meaningless robots, biological robots, living in a meaningless world, a meaningless universe. That is their creed. They cannot get away from it. It's part and parcel of, the four horsemen of new atheism, and there's Dawkins and there's Dennett. I mean, that's right out of their playbook, right? So Richard Dawkins, you are a biological robot. That's what he says in his book, The Selfish Gene. Daniel Dennett, the same thing. You are a biological robot. So Lawrence Krauss, who I interviewed on the show, famous physicist, wrote a book, Something Out of Nothing, I think is the title. And I might have got it slightly wrong there. But again, meaningless universe. So I think the natural question to ask those folks is, okay, so your life is meaningless. So you have because you have no love then. The love that you feel for your parents or for your children, that's meaningless. That doesn't really exist. That's an illusion. Your life is meaningless. Everything you're doing is meaningless. Why even perpetuate such an absurdity, right? I mean, we're talking about suicide now, right? Why perpetuate an absurdity that is all an illusion? You can't even say that it would be for the procreation of your dreams. Logically, the procreation of your genes. Logically, that doesn't even make any sense, because you would just be bringing other people into this illusion, into this big game. It's clearly a goofy idea. Philosophically, atheism makes no sense. So I've debated these folks over and over again on two fronts. Number one is that what I just said is that philosophically, your life has no meaning isn't a very strong position to take, and no one really believes that. Otherwise, they wouldn't perpetuate it. But number two, the news is, if that's the way it is, I can live with it. But the best science suggests, you know what? The universe isn't meaningless, and we are not biological robots, and we are not equal to our brain. So, that's the answer to the creed. Is the creed falls apart because the science doesn't back it up.
Well, the best point that I like is about consciousness, and how consciousness does not live inside the brain. The consciousness is bigger. Their consciousness is in a non-local, non-time-space reality, and I think Russell Targ says that best. He says it a lot better than I can. And physics, and he's a physicist, bears that out, especially quantum physics and string theory, and the idea that the reality doesn't collapse into a single thing until you observe it, and the waveform collapses, which leaves us to the point of possibly believing in multiple universes and multiple realities. And I've listened to so many of your podcasts, and I would have to say that probably you and I agree on many, many points. So probably I would have to bring it down to some things that maybe we don't agree upon, so that you get a chance to propound what you do believe regarding these things. And the one thing that seems to me to be still, and you say this too to a large extent, still a great mystery, is the reincarnation thing. And I want to just give you something that could be the case. It could be the case as well as reincarnation. And I'm really right there with those guys at the University of Virginia. In fact, we've had one of the researchers on, Ross Dunseith, who researches things.
I heard that interview and enjoyed it. Yeah.
Well, good. Thanks. He's a great guy, a really nice gentleman, too, to meet him. But couldn't reincarnation, I'm not saying this is the case, I'm just hypothesizing here, couldn't reincarnation be possibly that there are spirits or souls in non-carnate entities, disincarnate entities, some of which may have been alive at one time, some of which may not be? Couldn't they just be in the non-physical universe? And couldn't we pass through one of those and suddenly have the insights that might make us believe that reincarnation was true? I've had some of these experiences. I'm not saying this from a non-experiencer point of view. Could that be the case?
Sure. And to me, I don't think it is, but I don't know. To me, it gets back to the point I was making earlier, in that, I'm very keen to kind of understand the system of logic that we use for asking these questions, you know? And that relates back to my Skeptikos point, in that to me, there's certain areas that we cannot touch with logic, with reason, and with our limited capabilities. I mean, one of the things you hear from the near-death experience, extended consciousness folks, you'll also hear it from the psychedelic consciousness folks, and from the alien abduction contact folks. They all say the same thing. They say something about an information download, right? They say they were in this extended consciousness state where they knew everything. Before they could even ask a question, it was answered. So, and then the important thing is they returned to this state, and that was no longer the case. Like everything that was really big had to get jammed down into this little meat sack that we walk around with, and it doesn't quite fit. So, you know, to answer your question, I can't say that that isn't possible. And I can't say that, you know, Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia, who has concluded differently because he sees the birthmarks and he sees the stories and all that, I can't say that he's true. What I can say for myself is that that launching off point of fully coming to grips that we are this limitless extended consciousness, and this consciousness doesn't end at our death, boy, I mean, that's a full-time job, just really internalizing that and figuring out what that means in terms of how I should live my life, how I should be a better father, a better husband, a better friend, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean, just
Absolutely. I fully concur, and I'm not saying reincarnation is not the case. I am just offering a different possible perspective because I've looked at it from different points of logic. And as you have pointed out on Skeptiko, some of your guests have come up with different viewpoints, and they can't all be true.
right. You can only reincarnate 3 times. The soonest you can reincarnate is 18 months. You know, all these rules that when you step back, they start looking very religious, very orthodox again, which is, I think, something else. You know, you were mentioning the kind of the New York culture of kind of, hey, you know, don't talk about religion. You don't go there. It's like, no, I think they're at least, as Kate was alluding to, at least they're trying to tackle some of the bigger issues of, you know, what happens after we die and stuff like that. Hell, why aren't we all talking about religion as soon as we sit down? Oh, you're a Catholic? Oh, why do you really believe that? Do you believe the Pope is infallible? You know, all the rest. Why wouldn't I'm not have to be unpleasant about it? But
You might get beat up.
Well, I'll take my chances.
You know, I think one of the points you miss is that biological robots can have fun too, and maybe the whole point of our existence is if we are spiritual beings that have eternal life, maybe once in a while you want to get down here and have a little fun and experience a materialistic world. And I think that could very well be the point of our existence. And I think it's a really good idea to go out there, have fun, have a few drinks with a few good friends, drive a great sports car, and make some money. Nothing wrong with that.
Maybe. I think, you know, when we really, I don't have to disagree with you there, but I think when we take a big step back and look at our culture and our position in the world, I think we've done a pretty good job of that, you know, here in the West and here in the United States. And considering that, you know, half of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day, I mean, I think we should enjoy. I live an incredibly fortunate, awesome lifestyle and have a beautiful house overlooking the ocean. So I don't want to.
Oh boy!
I don't want to play. I want to kind of complain and kind of play up that other stuff. But I do think that compassion that comes with that realization, I think, makes us kind of constantly look in other directions.
You know, I was just thinking the other day, I was out with my dogs in the backyard, and really a very obvious, ordinary life, and I thought, my God, even now, just with this, I'm living. They had just had some show on TV about the old Elizabethan era, the Georgian era in England, and I thought, wow, those people lived a lot worse than I did. And I mean, I'm with you. I think it's really interesting to look into this stuff. There's some fascinating viewpoints, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not leaving for Tibet anytime soon.
Nor I. No, I don't think any of us are leaving for Tibet. Though I don't think Tibet is what it once was. I think it's being ruled by the Chinese right now, and it's I'm really unfortunate.
I don't know that much about it. But again, it's politics. See, I think the real evil in this world is politics and government. I don't think it's people. And I don't know. I don't know about you, Fahrusha, and you, Alex, but I would say 99% of the people I meet are really okay. I mean, not evil, not bad, not particularly good, not particularly bad, just nice.
I think that's probably true. I think that a lot of people I meet aren't thinking about the big questions, unfortunately, and maybe they're not meant to. I don't really know.
Okay, that's a good point, too.
But getting back to Skeptiko, no, you got a good point, Kate. You got a very good point. And all of us, Dave here and Bill and Kate and I and you there, we all live a pretty good life, that we have the time and the energy to sit around like we are talking about these things. But just getting back to your show, the one thing that I would like to see more of, and this is it's not you're doing a fabulous job, but I think I would love to see more about animals, because I really believe that there's a lot more consciousness out there, that so much is dedicated to human spirituality, whether it be in religion or whether it be in spiritual circles, and not enough energy is devoted to the animals, the plants, and even what we consider to be non-living things. But when we talk about living, we're talking about respiration, the fact that plants respirate and we breathe. And if something doesn't respirate or have a heartbeat, we think it's not alive. But I disagree with that, from the point of view that I have the feeling, I feel the energy in all things, even in rocks, in the earth, in the sun being alive. I mean, I really feel strongly about that. I can't prove it, but I do think that we should give more attention, at least, to the plants and animals around us. I think the rocks can take care of themselves, frankly. but I was so moved today by reading that the Pope, and I'm not a Catholic and I'm not going to become a Catholic, but he denounced cruelty to animals, and he felt that a good Christian, or a good person with a good heart, Christian, Jewish, atheist, or otherwise,
that's what I said. Most people
should be good to
beat
animals. And
I would love to death.
I would love to see more about animal communication and about animal and plant consciousness, like the Cleve Baxter stuff from the what is it, the 70s? Are you familiar with his research?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
First, I just had on the last episode,
Yes.
number 279.
Yes.
I had Simon Green on, so maybe that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Really interesting guy.
Yes, wonderful.
And talk about the plants communication. I was blown away. I mean, he is a guy, for your listeners, who is a healer, works with ayahuasca, has had numerous experiences in the Peruvian and Colombian, Amazonian jungle with, what do they call them? The curanderos, or I forget. Curanderos. I love the way you said that. Awesome. So, and the one thing I took away, just kind of as a minor thing, and that is, it's like, hey, how did these guys find out how to do all this stuff?
Really?
The plants told them.
Really?
That's what they all say, right? They say, hey, we entered this extended consciousness state, and the plants told us, you can use me for this. You can take me in the spring when my flower first blooms and mix me with this, and this will happen. And, to back that up, when we went down as Westerners to kind of pharmaceutically rape, pillage, and plunder everything we could, we went to these guys and said, well, how does this stuff work? And they had this encyclopedic knowledge of walking through the forest and just kind of saying these things. And these guys were blown away. They're like, how would you know that? How would you know you mix this with this at this way, and then it works without a chemical lab or without any of that? So we maybe have to take seriously that they really are communicating with the plants.
And Pachamama, too.
Yeah. Wow. So Alexander Fleming could have actually listened to what the moles were saying. Whoa.
Well, they
That's
could.
a thought.
They could.
Maybe. I mean, what am I? I don't know. But interestingly enough, in school, one of the professors was German from the early 1900s, and he had an encyclopedic knowledge of the plants of the Alps that he had derived from folklore, from the people. I think people actually just, they have a headache, they chew on willow bark and it goes away, or they chew on a dandelion and it doesn't. And I think over time and over millennia, and what I think people...
Maybe, Kate, but again, that's not what they're saying, right?
But,
so that they're saying something completely different from that. That's not to say what you're saying is true, but we have to have some way to kind of tease that out. And I kind of go with the testimony of the people involved, especially when we can go cross culture, cross time. We can take people in the Peruvian forest, and we can go take people 1,000 miles away that they never met, and they say the same thing. Then these are usually the markers that we say that that's what we should follow.
Well, the other thing that sort of irks me is when people talk about the so-called natives of wherever area they're talking about, is they assume that they're not intelligent, or at least that's an underlying assumption. Like, okay, they don't have certain information available to them, but that doesn't mean they're not intelligent.
Of course not.
And it doesn't mean that they're not curious and investigative, and that they don't investigate these things. However, all that being said, I do agree with you. There was, what was that, ancient botany where they used to take the shape of the plant that was similar to an organ in the body. And so they'd say, oh, if this looks like a heart, such as digitalis, then maybe it will help the heart. And hence foxglove got its name. But, I have to agree with you. I think there is definitely a communication between species. And I think we, as humans, don't always listen to it. We just disregard it. Now, I don't totally disagree with you. I just think that there's more to it than just simple plant communication.
And me over here on the other side of the table, I'm just wishing I could get my hands on some ayahuasca and try it out. I'm only half kidding.
No, she's not.
It's legal. It's legal here, right? You just have to find the right church. I mean,
Well, you go to that church
you're in
of that
California.
fellow
That doesn't-
Talat fellow that you had
Yeah,
on
yeah,
a while ago. I found him very, very interesting. I found him a little scary though too, and but he was extremely interesting. And with the
I also
Pachamama.
take a different perspective on it, at least for me personally, and that's that. What do I need to discover from that psychedelic experience? I need to discover that we're all connected, like we're saying. Well, I know that already. I need to discover that love is where I need to focus my energy because I'm in my head and I'm not in my heart enough. I know that already. What I get hung up on is the day-to-day practice of making that happen. So when I go hit the yoga mat, which I've done for, over 20 years,
Great.
and I face always this racing mind that tells me, oh, you can leave early or come on out of here or what are you having for lunch and all that. Hey, man, that's it right there. That's what's happening. That's the ayahuasca experience of being, why can I not be in the moment? Why can't I not apply myself? And then I just have to laugh at my condition. So, it's like one of my spiritual, I think, mentors and guides is a guy named Neem Karoli Baba, who passed away a number of years ago. We all know Ram Dass.
Right. Yes,
Be
I know.
here now. So Ram Dass, when he went to India, he went to see Neem Karoli Baba, and he tells the famous story about, these guys were all tripping. They're like crazy, right? I mean, Ram Dass was part with Timothy Leary. I mean, these are the guys who started the whole acid thing at Harvard back in the 60s. So they have a ton of acid and they bring it over there and they give it to this Indian saint, Maharaji, and he says, waves him over and says, give me the acid. And he takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and he places them on his tongue. So he makes sure that these guys see that it's not some sleight of hand thing. And he says, there, okay, I've taken it. And he says, nothing happens. They're amazed. I mean, nothing happens. And he tells them, he says, look, he says, this is a good medicine. This is a God medicine. It lets you see God. He said, but if it takes a very strong mind to have it not affect you or to have it affect you. He said, but it's an okay medicine. He said, but the goal is to see God all the time without the medicine, right? So, and I think he's using medicine there kind of freely, but I think the point is the same. The problem to me seems to be not how do we see God, because we all have moments, brief as they may be, when we try and I'm using God very loosely here, folks. I don't know what God means, and I certainly don't think it means anything Christian or Jewish or religious in any way that I think about, or Buddhist. But I think our challenge is to maintain that connection as much as we can. And in that sense, I'm not sure what psychedelics, how they can really help us do that long term.
Having not imbibed in psychedelics, but having been a person who has had experiencer type experiences, that's a double there. Having had a lot of experiences that were non-usual, unusual, paranormal, I do have the desire to try it. Not to make it my life, but I do have the desire to try it. Right now, I have a client who is setting off to go down to Colombia to participate at one of these sort of like ranches outside of the city where there is generally a shaman of some sort, and participate in an ayahuasca ritual. And the reason why she's doing it is because almost no substance at all affects her. I mean, she cannot be affected by normal alcohol and drugs at all. It doesn't affect her. And I thought she was lying. And then she proved it to me. Because it's a privileged communication, I'm not going to discuss the details, but suffice it to say that I was sufficiently convinced that all these medicinal substances did not have an effect on her. So I'm just interested from that point of view.
Well, I had a friend in high school, though, that, at that time, this is way before drugs and all this good stuff, we used to sort of fool around with beer. So it was the innocent days. But she could go through 2 or 3 six-packs and be totally sober. Totally. No alcohol had absolutely no effect on her
very
whatsoever.
Interesting.
And she was not a spiritual person.
No, neither is this woman that's going down to
As a
Colombia.
matter of fact, she's, God help her, a lawyer today. So,
So Alex, it's been great having you on here on our program here on Shattered Reality. And for our listeners, I cannot more highly recommend Skeptiko than anything. It's a wonderful, wonderul podcast. And if you like Shattered Reality, you'll probably love Skeptiko. And we're looking for more listeners too. But we have to give all kudos to you on this. You're really a veteran. You've done the heavy lifting, and we love you.
And it's great to have somebody out there asking the important questions. And I might be a little bit of a skeptic myself, but the questions have to be asked, and you do it, and congratulations.
You're a great guy, and we're on a lot of the same pages, and wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been awesome being on the air with you, and I wish you good luck with your show. I've listened to a couple episodes, and they're great. You have a great chemistry between you, so I'll keep listening.
Well, thank you, as will we.
Definitely. Have a great day.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Shattered Reality is our podcast. This was our 14th episode with the wonderful Alex Tsakiris of Skeptiko podcast, and he is just a real pioneer in the podcast area. He's been on since 2007. We just started about 6 or 7 months ago, so we're in awe of all that he has accomplished. By the way, please like Shattered Reality Podcast on Facebook, the like page, the fan page. Please like us on our 2 websites, shatteredrealitypodcast.com and shatteredrealitypodcast.wordpress.com. They're sort of mirror images, like them both. And we are on iTunes. If you have had like us on iTunes. If you have had an interesting UFO or other paranormal experience, and you are a listener to Shattered Reality and you would like to be on, please get in contact with us. We have one person standing by in England who had a very wonderful and interesting UFO experience that was investigated at the time. And he has been listening to Shattered Reality and wants to come on. And I'm hoping to put together, one show with maybe 3 people taking 20 minutes or 2 people taking a half an hour each. And we'd like to know what your experiences are. We'd also like guest suggestions. What do you say, Kate?
I would say so. And also, just as Alex said, we are all connected. And so everybody that has an experience by sharing theirs, you broaden all of our experiences. And it's really necessary for us to have this and have you who are listening to share all your thoughts with us. Because really, like Alex, we are all still searching for the truth. As, what the hell was his name again? Not Moldorf, I worked with him. Mulder. As Mulder said,
Mulder,
yeah,
yes.
The truth is indeed out there. We'd love to find out. I still think old George had the right thing. We're all going to find out, dying to find out, but I don't know. But yeah, we'd love to hear what you have to say. I mean, we can sit here and chatter on for a long time, but we'd want to know what you think.
And so, goodbye from Shattered Reality. Speak with you soon.
Yep. Bye.